Well, my story goes back to just 1 week before I was 21 years old. It was July of 1978. And when I was 19 years old, I got the job of a lifetime. I got to be the catering and hospitality manager backstage for a major production company in Chicago, Illinois. This meant I got to meet all the people that were on tour back in the 70s. So, it was two types of people touring then. I mean, there were actually everybody was touring then. You had the blues guys, you had the jazz guys, you had the punk guys. I got to meet the Ramones, I got to meet the Talking Heads, I got to meet everybody. But on this particular night in July of 1978, I was working with Emmylou Harris. And Emmylou Harris I'd had worked with before. Emmylou Harris is a country rock singer who's quite popular with that veneer of music. And Emmylou Harris, at one time, had had a lover named Graham Parsons. Graham Parsons was a musician from back in the 70s with the Flying Burrito Brothers and Graham Parsons himself. Graham Parsons had a very big substance abuse problem. And one of his big substance abuse friends was a Rolling Stone named Keith Richards. Now, back in those days, people still came up to you and said, Beatles or Stones? And of course, I was in the Stones. I was in the Stones. And the Kiefer was, of course, my idol. And having been working 3 years already backstage, I'd become a little jaded and become a little, cool. And, I was 20. And of course, I knew all these people. And I'd go out and hang out with my friends back at the bar that I hung out at and tell them stories of all the people I met that night or the night before, and they quickly got bored with these stories. But anyway, on this night, my boss comes up to me and he says, Tommy, Keith is coming to the concert hall. And this is a small hall of about 850 people, so it's a pretty intimate club. And I just said, what? And all my coolness kind of went out the door. So in those days, the bands would play two sets. They'd play an early set and a late set. So in between the two sets, they had about an hour and a half to 2 hours to kill. So it was my job to keep them happy backstage and to basically get whatever they wanted or whoever they wanted. And then basically just make sure the dressing room was cool and the band was cool and they would get on stage for the second set. And so next thing you know, it's like, when is Keith coming? When is Keith coming? When is Keith coming? And Keith's almost like a no-show. And then all of a sudden, Keith arrives. And Mr. Cool Tom is like, blah, 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 blah. So I finally get up the courage to say, Mr. Richards, is there anything you would need or like? He looks around the dressing room and of course says, bottle of Jack. So I currently run downstairs to the bar and ask for, and they said, well, Tommy, what does the band want? And I said, bottle of Jack. And they said, a whole bottle? And I said, it's for Mr. Richards. So they all said, okay, no problem. So I trump upstairs, and I'm just kind of a fly on the wall. And that is my job. My job is to be a fly on the wall. My job is not to go, ooh, ah. I love the Exile on Main Street album that you guys did. And that, Sweet Virginia is one of my favorite songs. And, but I had known Emmylou Harris for several years leading up to this. And so it was very interesting that Emmylou Harris then comes up to me and she says, Tommy, come here. And I go, what's this? And she goes, what are these? And she opens up her palm. She goes, Keith just gave them to me. And I said, oh, they say Royer 714 on them. That was the initials that the Quaalude, which was basically something that if you took, it was like drinking a six-pack of beer for one pill, and he'd given her two. So I said, I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, if you're going to take those, you're never going to make it to the stage during the second set. So she immediately just popped them in my hand. Meanwhile, I'm now hanging around with Keith Richards' drugs in my hand. So it's like, oh my God. Now Keith in those days, he actually traveled with a doctor. This doctor had a bag. It was his doctor bag. And of course, in the doctor bag, you can imagine what happened, or what was in it. Another person in the dressing room at that time was a guy named Phil Kaufman. Phil Kaufman was the nanny to the rock and roll stars. That was his. That actually was on his business card. Phil Kaufman's claim of fame was he was Graham Parsons' road manager, and he was the one who stole Graham Parsons' body from LAX and drove it out to Joshua Tree National Park and buried it. This is because these were the last dying wishes of Graham Parsons before he OD'd. But to bring the story around, the whole night was just, I was in total awe and could hardly speak to the man who I had worshipped my whole teenage life and my 20s, and still to this day quite respect and worship. But that was the one evening I had with Keith Richards, and I got to be a fly on the wall. The next night was Cheech and Chong.